Hi everyone, and welcome to our twice weekly dose of sanity, saving and practical advice as part of our Parenting in a Pandemic series. I'm Katrina Blowers from 7 News, and I'm joined by renowned parenting expert and the director of the University of Queensland's Parenting and Family Support Centre, Matt Sanders. Hello again, Matt.
Hi there, nice to be here.
So today we're going to take a deep dive into how to take care of some of our family relationships, and that is not easy given the strain that comes with weeks of social isolation and social distancing too.
Indeed, I think one of the issues for many families is that it's unusual for them to be spending this amount of time with each other in such close proximity and for a long period of time. And it's all occurring under extended periods of stress that people are under. All you need is large families with a few rooms, and literally people are living on top of each other. So opportunities for conflict are much more frequent.
Yeah, I have a blended family, so there's a number of people living under the same roof who aren't usually there. So give us some of the other reasons why perhaps we're experiencing an increase in friction right now. Why are we all getting on each other's nerves?
Well, part of it is also because people are worried about things. They're worried about their finances. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about this juggling of working from home and for some people providing homeschooling supervision for kids. And this can put people on edge and make them irritable. And they can end up being bothered by things that usually doesn't actually annoy them as much. And also it can be a situation where there's a lot of imbalance in terms of who's responsible for what. And I think in many households, there is not the degree of sharing of the burden of family responsibilities and running a household, so that I think some mums in particular can feel that there's a tremendous extra burden on them, particularly with their caring responsibilities.
So as a mum, you're doing sort of 3 dishwasher loads a day and you feel like you're preparing endless meals. For others in the family environment, when you feel yourself getting that kind of boiling anger feeling, what are some of the ways that you can diffuse that flashpoint?
Yeah, it's interesting because part of the issue is just tuning into your own emotional state and becoming aware of how you're feeling and how you're communicating that to others around you. Sometimes we can come across as cranky and irritable, and we don't intend it to be that way, but we're worried about other things and it just comes out in our interactions. So one of the most basic things, I think, is to tune into the way in which we are speaking to others. And if you think about communication as both speaking and listening parts of it, if you're tuning in to your speaking, just ask yourself this: are you providing a good example to your kids of how to speak calmly and respectfully to others? Or are they witnessing a lot of shoutiness, a lot of kind of yelling and threatening? And if that's occurring a lot, that's a signal to really calm down and de-escalate. Being attuned to your own voice is so important when you think about trying to get kids to do things, or to when you're engaging with others in the family. So you're trying to eliminate things that are about accusing, blaming, shaming, engaging in behaviour that, in a sense, you would be so much better if you just bit your tongue and said nothing, rather than to respond in that kind of negative, put-downing kind of way. Because the more that happens, the more friction is likely to occur. What we really need is time to discuss things that are problems when the circumstances are right. And it's not while you're in the middle of someone's favourite TV program, or you're in transition, getting kids organised to do things and to get into bed. You need it perhaps with a partner at a time where the children are in bed and you've got some quiet time to talk it through. The other thing I just mentioned here is that it's really important to tune into thoughts that you might have that actually trigger anger. If you have thoughts like, oh, well, this is just typical of him. Here he goes again. He's not paying any attention to my needs and it's all about him. He's always doing this. Those kind of thoughts that are very blamey lead to feelings in us that where we feel almost like our anger is justified, and that we get into a situation then of lashing out and saying things perhaps that we regretted.
Thank you, Matt. I'm already taking some mental notes on areas that I can definitely improve upon. Well, stay with us, because after the break, Matt is back with some more tips on how to stay calm and remain respectful and show you care when those family relationships are strained. Welcome back, and thanks for your company. Well, we all know that times are extra tense right now. Family squabbles are a normal part of life. But Matt, how do we stop them from escalating when it sort of feels a bit like Chinese water torture every day? Is there something that we can control as parents when it comes to the way we're thinking about these situations?
Yeah, it's interesting that I think one of the main things that we need to do is to tune into what we're telling ourselves about the situation that is annoying us. So, for example, if a child is in the kitchen, they pour themselves a glass of milk and they're coming across the kitchen, and then it drops and it goes all over the floor.
Hey, plenty, hey. It's all right, buddy. Don't worry about it. We'll clean it up.
Now, a parent who sees that and then is thinking to themselves, oh, God, here we go again. What a mess. Those thoughts actually increase the chances that we will get irritated and then use an angry voice in responding to the child, saying, look, just be more careful. And we end up kind of saying things that almost like blame the child for a behaviour, whereas you can think about, 4-year-olds, accidents happen. But the point I'm really making here is that it's not so much the behaviour of the other person that causes our distress, it's how we interpret it, what we tell ourselves about that behaviour. And if you think that the behaviour is designed to deliberately upset you or to annoy you, then you're more likely to think that retribution is justified and your anger is warranted in dealing with the situation. And that's actually not good for either kids or for parents.
So what should we be thinking about instead? If you've said to a child, please pick up your toys, or please be careful with your drink, and you've said that day after day, what should you think instead so you don't get frustrated?
I mean, the issue really is that you're trying to avoid saying something that will fuel your anger. And then if the child is not cooperating for whatever reason, the most important thing is to just keep your cool, to keep a calm voice, to give a clear instruction or direction and be prepared to follow through with it, but without voice escalation. Because as soon as you get into that getting angry and explosive, what can happen, of course, is that children will, perhaps not cooperate initially, and then you escalate the voice. We call it the escalation trap. Why is it a trap? Because the child is accidentally rewarding you for having shouted at them. And that's not good, because it means in the future, you're more likely to think, I've got to escalate to get my kids to cooperate. And that's a formula for you to becoming more and more cranky and irritable with children.
Matt, that is so helpful, thank you. Do you have a couple of really quick tips you can give us now to show our families we actually care during these times?
Look, I think the important thing is really just to build in some fun family activities. It's tough for everyone at the moment, but the thing that you can do together as a family or just individually with your children is go for a walk. You can play games, you can sing, you can dance, you can do artwork, you can do projects, you can create competitions. There's ways of engaging that will bring you together in a positive, fun way of sharing time. The other thing, of course, is that make sure that you're showing your kids that you really care. You're giving them plenty of hugs and cuddles. Affection is so important at times like this, and that you've got enjoyable activities that the kids are doing most of the time. And it's not that you have to be the entertainer all the time, but to support kids get started with activities is a good idea. Bringing someone in the family a cup of tea, or offering to rub their feet, or to give them a massage, to speak respectfully, to talk to them in a way that shows that you care is such an important thing. And if you're in a couple relationship, just remember when you're under stress and you've got responsibilities for children, it's so easy to ignore your relationship with your partners.
Here you go, sweetheart. Here's a cup of tea.
Thank you very much. This looks good.
And so you need some couple time as well to convey your care and to enjoy each other's company. Otherwise, you can get on each other's nerves really easily.
I'll be telling my partner you've prescribed a foot massage for tonight. Doctor's orders.
Why not?
Well, when we return, how to set your kids up for success despite the restrictions of COVID-19.
That was your answer, wasn't it?
You're with us on Parenting in a Pandemic. Now, kids can feel especially vulnerable and uncertain at a time when everything seems so topsy-turvy to all of us. So, Matt, what are some skills or what are some strategies that you can give us as parents to keep our kids moving forward in a positive way?
Look, it's interesting at a time like this when you think about just the level of stress and anxiety that people are experiencing, that it is also an opportunity for children to be developing their coping skills, their resilience, and their social skills of how they can more appropriately interact with others. I think one of the things that makes it a lot easier for both children and parents to deal with what's in front of them if they just ask the question, does my child have enough age-appropriate things to keep them busy? Having plenty of things to keep you busy means that kids are less likely to be focused on being bored, being anxious, being worried about things or getting into trouble. And so one of the challenges here is to use the idea of brainstorming with kids to develop a list of up to 20 activities that you can put on the fridge that these are the things that kids can do if they're feeling they've got nothing to do or they're feeling a bit bored. And of course, they have to not cost anything. And so when you give kids a chance to really do some brainstorming about the things that they could do when they're feeling at a bit of a loose end, it's amazing the things that they can come up with. The other thing I'd just say is that there are some activities with children that involve you as a parent treating your kids individually rather than as a cluster or as a group. Sometimes children just need a bit of mum time or dad time individually with you, reading a story, listening to their experience of the day, their highlight of the day, showing that you care, that you're interested, that you're involved with them.
Now, we've spoken a lot about family rules before, but during this particular time when everything seems so fluid and the rules in society seem to be changing almost on a daily basis, how important is it to stick to those rules and to, I suppose, work with your kids to get them to evolve?
Well, there are some rules that are enduring ones, like, washing your hands at the moment and some social distancing kind of rules that are occurring. But over time, parents need the capacity to be able to change the rules and to discuss them with their children.
What about with the homeschooling kids? I think it's still important that we're up just as early as we normally would. I think that's a good rule. Yeah.
And so that idea of discussing the rules in advance, getting kids to tell you what those rules are and why they're there, and then establishing that as a bit of a plan just before you get into the situation. A little reminder of what the key rules are. It's important.
Having those expectations really clear in your children's minds.
They're their rules, not just your rules that you're imposing upon them. And they're there for a reason, so that the kids understand that, if you had a good rule is one that can be revisited and fine-tuned as you need to. It's not just set in concrete forever.
So, Matt, I have a 9-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl, and they are getting on each other's nerves like never before. How do we as parents helpfully manage them through this conflict? What can we tell them about how to, not get on each other's nerves too much and express themselves in a more positive way?
Yeah, it's a very tricky issue because part of it is to do with, learning the skills of asking appropriately to have a turn. And then if you're on the iPad and someone else wants to have a turn, it's when someone approaches you that you acknowledge the request and then, kind of negotiate a time where you're going to swap roles and that kind of thing.
Do you want to have a turn at scooping, Audrey?
Yes.
skill, good sharing.
So these are actually complex social skills. And I think the main thing that we need to remember is that if we hear kids shrieking at each other, rather than trying to sort it out in terms of who caused what and then be the great adjudicator, often it's a good idea to just look at the situation and then do a reset and say, look, let's try it again. If the younger one was wanting to have a turn and join a game or to participate, make sure that they know how to ask in a civil, pleasant way, and that they practice that. And then the older one knows how to receive that request, and they convey to the younger one when or how it's appropriate for them to join it. So that the thing is that sometimes you have to model the skills of asking appropriately, sharing, turn taking, and then get the kids to practice it. And then when you see them doing it appropriately, make sure you give them what we call descriptive praise. You guys are doing it really well this time, and you describe exactly what it is that they've just accomplished that you appreciate, which means there's less friction, less conflict, and the kids learn to share resources.
I love that. Hitting the reset button. I'm definitely going to use that. Well, coming up, empty nesters who've suddenly found their adult children returning home. How to deal with different family dynamics. Welcome back to Parenting in a Pandemic with parenting expert Matt Sanders. Now, a lot of empty nesters have reported their adult children moving back home, either for financial or health reasons. Matt, that can result in some extra stresses.
It can, but it's also a wonderful experience because, parents who've experienced that kind of empty nests feeling with their kids going away, they're coming back now, and that they're reconnecting with the mothership, and to have the opportunity to spend some time with young adults again is often terrific. However, it does come with some hazards. And one of those is if kids who've been away simply slip back into being a teenager again within the family situation, which may have meant for them at the time, basically mum or dad do most things. They don't tidy up after themselves, they don't do any cooking, they don't do any cleaning, they don't do any ironing, they don't wash their clothing and so on. Now, it's not a good idea with adults coming back to live at home to go back to earlier phases of parenting. It's important to kind of negotiate with your kids what are reasonable expectations of adults living under the same roof, where it's about a shared responsibility in running a household. It's not about one person doing it all for everyone. It's just too exhausting.
So sitting down and having an adult conversation with your adult children.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't mean that things like giving the kids positive feedback for them actually doing the things that are good intentions at the moment. But when they do it, make sure you do give them some encouragement and positive feedback about it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
That's all right.
And be prepared to review it. How are we travelling on this? Because if you just ignore it, what you can get is this sort of increasing sort of irritation that occurs, that you end up feeling more snappy and resentful about what's going on, when what's needed is an open discussion, almost like a family problem-solving meeting where you bring it up as an issue and you discuss it and you develop a game plan that you then implement.
We're also in a situation right now with multiple families living under the one roof. What kind of tips do you have for those sorts of situations?
Look, we just have to be respectful of other people's space. That, for example, if you've got older parents in the household and you've got teenagers who love really loud music, but the older parents it drives them nuts. I think it's very important to be aware of noise, of space, of making sure that you're not engaging in a behaviour that is really irritating the heck out of someone else. Whereas if you'd played the music loudly but they weren't actually within earshot, it might have been okay. But to be in the same room and them having to tolerate the kind of music that they may in fact not like, particularly is a problem. So it's all about being respectful towards others.
So Matt, if you will, can you take us through and recap some of the main strategies from today for keeping the peace in your household right now?
Okay, take notice of situations and thoughts that trigger negative emotion, particularly that trigger your anger. And then focus upon making sure that you don't let those negative thoughts turn into negative, angry interactions. So focusing on speaking pleasantly and remaining calm in a situation when you're trying to engage with other people in your family is pretty basic. Having plenty of interesting and engaging things to keep kids busy. Busy children are less likely to be disruptive, to be annoying, and that they're going to be entertaining themselves for much of the time. The other thing I think it's important to focus on is just to make sure that there is some couple time where you, with your partner, are able to join up, to be together, to show that you care and you have a loving, caring and supportive relationship of each other, because when you're working as a team like that, the parenting responsibilities are so much easier to handle.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. Plenty of gold nuggets of wisdom there and lots of practical strategies that we can start implementing today.
Great. I hope it was helpful to people.
Well, thank you so much for your company, and do join us next week for more of parenting in a pandemic. Until then, stay well and stay happy.